the podcast to fill my brain. Movies and Task, Reddit, Minute of Sports, betting $1 and Joel the Game, Quora and questions from real listeners, all that and more on Joel the Podcast.
Okay, we're recording again, and it worked the first time, so it'll probably work this time.
Hello everybody, I'm Alex.
And I'm Alex.
And this is our podcast,
Joel.
Attempt number 1, guys.
For real.
And man, it's very satisfying to hear that live.
Yep.
As you may have guessed from what I just said, and from the annoying road background, we're live in the car, on our way to Niagara Falls.
Probably the first time anyone's ever podcasted in a car, don't you think?
Well, except for us, we've podcasted in a car before.
Oh, that's true.
This is the second time anyone's ever podcasted in a car before.
Yeah, and you know what? It's the first time that anyone has ever podcasted in a car in the morning.
Oh, and in New York.
And in New York. We gotta stop adding qualifications to it, or it starts sounding less.
Well,
impressive.
I think that was like not an additional qualification; it's a separate thing. So, first time podcasting in the car in the morning, and first time podcasting in the car in New York.
Got it. Yeah, definitely nobody's ever recorded a podcast in the car in New York.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess what we're trying to say is this is a monumental occasion.
Absolutely monumental.
So yeah, welcome to episode 101 of Joel the Podcast. I wanted to start off by reminding everyone that Nathan does not owe me $1.
And Alex does not owe me $1.
And let's talk about sports. Do you have a 1-minute timer you can pull up?
Oh, I can. Hold on, it's going to take me a minute to get it set up.
1 minute to get the 1-minute timer. Why don't we just talk about sports until you get the timer set up?
That would
be very imprecise. And, on Joel the Podcast here, we're very all about accuracy and precision.
Definitely. All right, I've got a 1-minute timer. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Start.
So, Game 6 of the NBA Finals concluded last night with the Bucks winning the series 4-2.
4 in a row, too.
Yeah, they lost the first 2 and then won the last 4, so...
I'm sure my coworkers will be excited.
Yeah. My brother also works with people from Wisconsin, so I think
nice.
Similarly. Well, it's I don't know, I think a lot of people predicted that they would lose, especially after they lost the first 2 games. It really looked like the Suns were just the better team.
Right.
Better coached, but alas, it did not turn out that way, so congratulations to them. Also, the Olympics start this weekend, I believe.
Oh, wow.
I don't really know much more
I know nothing
that,
about the Olympics.
But I guess we'll talk about it next time.
Yeah. So stay tuned for premier Olympics coverage.
Right.
All right, that was the end of the minute. It
okay.
didn't make any noise, which is a shame. But...
All right. Well, that was basically everything anyway.
Just gonna quit that app. And good, it kept recording in the background, so
nice.
This episode isn't ruined already. Remember, this is still attempt 1.
And attempt number 1. First of all, I think I may have mentioned it, but I wanted to apologize for the presumably loud road noise in the background. Sitting in the car, we kind of get used to it.
Right.
But I imagine you're listening on a recording, it'll be kind of annoying. So.
Actually, I wonder if the noise reduction in Audacity will pick up the road noise well enough to make
It's just us apologizing for no background.
Guys,
guys, I'm so sorry, and it's just silent. All right, well, send us an email about whether Audacity did that. You can find our email on our website, alexandalex@joelthepodcast.github.io/alexandalex@joelthepodcast.website/index.html for convenient access. So, yeah, that's that. So, Nathan, what are we doing today on this episode? Oh, actually, did we receive any emails?
I have no idea, actually.
Let's check.
I'm guessing...
Live on the podcast.
I'm guessing not.
Wow,
and
you've posted 2 episodes since the last episode was recorded, I think, so...
Wait. The reason that I have no idea is the same reason that I shouldn't be guessing not. Because... So essentially what's going on is I don't have the podcast email on my phone.
Right.
And I was saying, well, we haven't gotten any emails because I didn't get any notifications that we got emails,
Right.
but I don't have the podcast email on my phone.
Right.
So, all of that being said, I am now logging into our email, hoping that I remember the password.
While you're doing that,
I just want to say real quick that as I type out this email, it's very obvious to me why we made a website.
right,
It's just
kind of a long email address.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think that is a really good job by us. Give
For
ourselves
sure.
a pat on the back.
Definitely.
For those listeners who can't tell, we literally just patted ourselves on the back. So while you're trying to log in there, I'll tell the listeners what we're doing today.
Oh no, wrong password.
Which is reviews. So far on this trip, we've been to New York City, and we've been to Ithaca and a nearby state park to Ithaca.
Ugh, it's we're gonna have to skip the emails today. It's
No.
as I log in here, it's like, hey, check your other device to confirm that it's you.
Is that phone not your other device?
No,
Oh,
my old phone is.
your old phone.
All right, well,
Stupid 2-factor authentication.
yeah, that's a shame. If you sent us an email, we're sorry that we didn't get to read it on this episode. We'll read it next week.
Yes.
In fact, we can read it twice next week to make up
Well,
for
I
the
don't
fact
know
that
about
we.
that.
Oh, okay.
We'll read it one time next week.
At least. If you'd like us to read it twice, send us the exact same email again.
Yes, that we'll read it twice if you do that.
Right, because
Although I guess this episode is not going to be released before then, so it's kind of useless for us to say that. But yeah, if you send us 2 copies of the same email, we're required by the rules to read them both.
Right.
So read it twice, basically. So there's a little hack for the Joel the Podcast power listeners. So like I said, today we'll be doing reviews. So far we've been to New York City and Ithaca, and a state park near Ithaca.
And Syracuse, in that big mall.
And Syracuse. So we'll be talking about our various experiences, telling you, what to go to, what to avoid if you were ever in these locations, and really just, blessing the world with our opinions, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely 100% the case. So, should we begin at the beginning or just randomly bounce around?
Let's begin at the beginning. Let's go in chronological order. That way we're less likely to forget things.
Okay.
So the first thing is the Syracuse airport. So for me, I arrived and sat in the cell phone waiting lot for about 10 minutes, and then went to the terminal and sat there for about 10 minutes, and then we left. So I don't really have a lot of experience, but you were actually inside the airport. So what are your thoughts on the Syracuse airport?
Right. The thing that comes to mind, for me at least, is that there was not a clear indication of which terminal we were at once we were inside. You asked us if we were at Terminal A or Terminal B, and actually, up until the moment that we were leaving the terminal, I had no idea.
And which one were you at?
I don't remember at this point.
So
I think it may have been Terminal A.
Yeah.
But the signage in the Syracuse airport, I'd say they cover most of the unimportant stuff, like which gate you're going to.
Right.
There was a lot of information about flights that I didn't want to get on. That,
Right.
Just very boring.
I can't believe they didn't know that you weren't getting on any flights.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're not leaving until tomorrow, so that information really shouldn't, unless I mean, I guess I didn't look too closely. Maybe they were showing information about the Thursday flights. But even still, there were way more flights listed than I would be interested in tomorrow anyway.
Right.
So, I'm gonna give the Syracuse airport a solid 5 out of 10. You know, very average experience. Definitely some downsides.
Very functional, at least. You know,
but
the plane
pretty
was able
functional.
to land, and you were able to, find my car.
Right. So all of the basics worked out pretty well, but absolutely nothing more. So there you go. After the Syracuse airport, we did drive over to a restaurant in Syracuse. It was called was it the Bull and Bear Grill? Is that right? That sounds right.
Something like Bull and Bear something. I don't know if it's grill or smokehouse or something like that.
They were kind of a barbecue type place. And by the way, this is none of these reviews are sponsored, so you can be guaranteed.
We are not sellouts. We would never, actually not true, but we would. I'm going to say that we would never take money to give a place a more favorable review.
Right.
So you can rest assured that these are all legitimate, unbiased reviews.
Right. So let's walk through our experience. We went inside and got a table.
Yep.
That experience, good 8 out of 10 for me. It was a good table.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, it wasn't like when we walked in that the hostess stand wasn't right in front of us. We had to walk down a bit, and then somebody was like, "Hey, you guys want a table?"
That's true.
I don't remember exactly how it happened because it was such a terrible experience that I've blocked it out of my memory. No,
wow.
Not really.
So,
but I think it is a little lower than 8 out of 10.
So once we were sitting down, at least the table was 8 out of 10.
The table was very nice itself, and we were right next to a window, looking out onto a beautiful gray sky and road, which was great.
Right. It was up on a little platform, so we felt extra special.
Yep. Absolutely. As we should.
Right. Clearly they recognized us from the
from our podcast
from
photo.
the podcast
Even
photo.
though we weren't wearing the shirts.
No, which we are today, by the way. I don't think we mentioned that yet.
Yeah, all the
but,
how many people do you think are going to come up to us at Niagara Falls and ask about the podcast?
that's gonna be so annoying.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say at least 1,000.
At least 1,000.
Yeah. And that's only if we're there for an hour or two.
Right,
it could be much worse.
Which will be there for longer than an hour for sure.
Yikes!
So,
wow, I'm not looking forward to this.
Drive 3.5 hours to stay there for an hour and then 3.5 hours back.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the important bit about the restaurant. How was the water?
The water, I've got to say, honestly, I don't remember much about the water, which is not a good sign.
Well, it's also not a bad sign.
It's also not a bad sign,
kind of a
but
mediocre sign.
it is a pretty mediocre sign. I gotta say that that our waitress did a great job of keeping the water filled up. I was never sitting there for extended periods of time,
right,
wanting to drink water and being unable to do so.
Right.
But the water itself, just very, very forgettable. So.
All right. So, out of 10, would you say 5 out of 10?
I'll give it a solid 5.5 out of 10.
Oh my gosh.
Extra bonus points. Half a bonus point rather for the waitress.
Right.
So.
Okay. So after that, we went to the mall in Syracuse, which is called Destiny USA, and it's actually I don't know the exact ranking, but it's one of the top 3 largest malls in the country.
It was very big.
It was huge.
It was 4 stories.
Yes.
It was very difficult to park at and very confusing to get inside of.
And once you're inside, you're walking around, you feel like you should have completed a circle or something, but
right.
you just never do. It's just continuously going.
Right.
It has a ropes course inside.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
It has a movie theater.
It has a Crocs store.
Yeah.
Where all of the things inside the store are Crocs. So side note, I don't know if any of our listeners are more aware than I am, but and maybe we discussed this at the time too, but my question is, are Crocs cool? I know for a while there, Crocs were definitely not cool.
Right.
But here's an entire store devoted to Crocs, and there were dozens of people inside.
There were a lot of people in there.
So.
Well, okay. There. First of all, there is a difference. I mean, it is possible for Crocs to not be cool and people still wanting to buy them, right?
I guess that's true because we still wanted to buy them.
Right.
It's just they were too expensive.
Well, so then that brings us to our next point, which is even though it's possible that that's the case, was that the case? Are Crocs cool or not cool or neutral? And since we are the world's tastemakers, I think it's kind of up to us to decide.
That's true. So my opinion may have recently changed from uncool back to cool.
So you skip right over neutral. You're uncool to cool.
Yeah, I think, neutral is kind of a cop-out answer, honestly. It's very valid in a lot of situations, but when you're talking about Crocs, I mean, something so polarizing really has to be on one end of the spectrum or the other. So yeah, there you have it. First I asked the question, then I answered it definitively. Crocs are cool. Do you want to weigh in?
Well, I was gonna say neutral, but you kind of, convinced me that that's kind of a cop-out. I agree. I don't know. I on the one hand, I don't think Crocs look good. I think they look kind of dumb. But on the other hand, they are an extremely lightweight, waterproof, very functional shoe.
Yeah.
I think certain people can pull them off very well.
Like us, obviously.
Well, obviously us, but I mean other people too.
Yeah.
So I would say if I had to pick one, I would say cool. I would agree with you.
All right. There you have it. You're welcome, everyone.
You heard it here first. Again. Yeah, Crocs are cool again.
Final note about the Crocs store. I want to rate its cheetah print selection a solid 4 out of 10. They did have cheetah print Crocs.
They had multiple
pairs,
Crocs.
But they were all very expensive, and so I didn't buy any.
And we're not going to provide any context as to why you might have wanted to buy them.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the part of the mall that everybody is waiting to hear about, which is the parking lot.
Yikes. I gotta say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Big thumbs down from me.
Right.
This was a not fun experience.
I think, so there's another large mall near where I grew up, and they have a parking garage next door. And I think that's the way to go. Like, having people have to drive around, like, the entire mall to find an open parking spot is really not ideal.
Yeah. And it wasn't like the parking lots were, like, large and full. They were, like, multiple small lots.
Well,
kind of.
Right.
Well, I mean, there were lots of varying sizes.
There were varying sizes of lots, but none of them were, like, the size to where you look at this lot and go, this is the size that the largest mall, one of the largest malls in the country should have, right?
Right. And furthermore, there was no lot where I was like, I was never confident that when we pulled into a parking lot that there would be a space because the lot was simply too large to be full.
Right. We did look at one entire lot that was full. We drove
right.
through it.
And that's, based on the road situation around there, it was very like twisting and turning around the mall. It wasn't, wasn't planned very well. So
out of 10, I would give this parking lot a 3. Out of 10, I do have to give it points because we did find a parking spot.
Yeah, you're right.
And it seems like most people were able to park, so that is good. But yeah, as we said, a lot of problems with it. What would you give it?
Yeah, I might even go so far as to say this was a 2 out of 10 experience for me.
Right.
Obviously, not being the one driving the car makes it a little bit easier on the actual search for the parking spot front, because you can just kind of look around rather than have to do
focused
stuff
on not crashing.
Right. Yeah.
Or running anyone over.
Yeah, but and this is definitely an indictment of the parking lot itself and not your selection of choice. Once we got out of the car, we had to walk quite a while before we actually were able to get inside the mall. So
yeah, we walked to one door that was close, but it was closed.
Right.
So bad job by the mall for closing that one door that we parked near.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we were able to find parking.
It's crazy. The entire parking lot centered around that door was just completely empty. All right. Well, what did we do next then? We came back to.
We went back to Binghamton.
Right.
I guess I never revealed my location on the podcast.
Well,
before,
good thing you're moving.
Good thing I'm
away.
moving, so no one can come find me.
Right. We went to that Italian restaurant.
We went to an Italian restaurant, which was very good. So the part about this restaurant that I want to talk about is the art. I don't know if you noticed it. I was talking about it with Shelby while you were in the bathroom.
Yeah.
But they had a ton of art on the walls.
Right. I mean, as far as I can remember, looking around the restaurant, if they were to have like another new picture, like roughly of the same size of the ones that were already hanging on the wall, there literally wouldn't be a place to put it.
They had enough art there that if they opened a second restaurant of the same size, they could just take art from their walls and decorate the other restaurant, and then they would have two like nicely decorated restaurants instead of one like over decorated restaurant.
They would both just look very reasonably decorated.
Yes. And for the record, I actually want to say it kind of implied just then that it was too much. But I actually didn't dislike it that much. The fact that there was so much, I kind of liked it. I don't know, like it was more interesting, I guess, than if they had just had a normal amount of art, right?
Yeah.
Like if they had a normal amount of art, I probably wouldn't have even noticed or commented on it.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
So I guess, and the art was good too. Like it wasn't like, distasteful or bad in any way. It was well done. A lot of it looked like, actual like original paintings, which was very cool. Which is expensive. I'm surprised they were able to have so many of them.
This must be an incredibly successful restaurant.
Right. So I think it was a very positive part of the experience. I would say 8 out of 10 on the art. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say, you know what, I think 8 out of 10 is pretty fair. It was obviously a very well-decorated restaurant on the higher end of level of decoration for sure, but I think I would agree with you that, it wasn't like distasteful or anything like that. The one thing that I have to say about it is like, I mean, and probably this is true of any restaurant art regardless, based on the fact that we haven't been there in several days, but I cannot picture a single piece of the art. Like I have no idea if they were like of people or like landscapes or what. So,
right.
That definitely prevents me from going any higher. But.
Right. Yeah. None of the art was like, wow, this piece of art is amazing.
Right.
It was just like, oh, nice art.
Right.
So wait, what rating did you say? I missed it.
I agreed with your
8 out of 10. Okay, great.
So.
Okay, so what next?
Let's just briefly talk about the water at this restaurant.
Oh yeah, couldn't forget the water.
Although this was several days ago, this one definitely does stick in my mind. Excellent water, great taste, very non-flavorful.
What?
Again, the
great taste, very non-flavorful.
Well, it's water. It's what you want.
If it was non-flavorful, then it would be no taste.
I think it's a great taste that it didn't have any flavor. That's
flavor and taste are like not synonyms, but like related to the point where you taste flavor, right? If there's no flavor, then there's no taste. You didn't taste anything.
So if you were to taste, you know how sometimes you can like taste your own tongue, like maybe when you wake up, or maybe it's not your tongue, but it's like it's not your. Shelby's weighing in from the back seat. I don't know if you can hear on the recording, but apparently you're not tasting your tongue in those instances. I guess that makes sense because I'm not like curling my tongue to taste itself.
Yeah, I was gonna say the taste buds are on your tongue, so that wouldn't really make any sense.
True. So but are you always tasting your tongue then? Is your tongue?
No, you're never tasting your tongue.
You're never tasting your tongue, even though the taste buds are definitely on the tongue.
You'd have to turn your taste buds upside down to taste your tongue.
So I'm trying to like curl my tongue right now, and granted I'm not very good at it, but when I do, it doesn't taste any different.
Well, if you like, I'm okay. I'm trying to talk and not do this at the same time, but if you use your teeth to press fold your tongue in half, basically.
Yeah.
I think I can taste something at least.
It's not your tongue.
It's still not. Shelby weighing in again from the back.
If I fold my tongue in half, I'm not tasting my tongue.
What are you tasting?
You're tasting it's a gross description. I don't know if we want that.
I want everything.
I want to know what's going on. How am I not tasting my tongue?
My understanding is that you are tasting the remaining saliva and bacteria in your mouth from whatever you last ate.
All right.
Okay,
Well, good thing we had an expert here to disabuse us of our.
I am not an expert.
Good thing we had an amateur here to disabuse us of our incorrect notions.
Right.
You cannot taste your tongue. But anyway, did you want to continue the point you were making?
No, it pretty much 100% hinged on you not tasting your tongue. So,
All right.
I still stand by my assertion that the water tasted great and yet had
All right.
no flavor.
Cool.
So let us know what you think about that as the listener.
Yeah, send us an
Settle
email.
this debate. The first person who emails us gets to be the certified
Impartial-
third-party impartial judge.
Are we giving them a certificate?
No, definitely not.
So they're not certified.
We'll give them a certificate in theory, but like I don't want to send anybody anything.
So theoretically certified.
Theoretically certified third-party impartial judge. Cool. Well, looking forward to hear the responses on that. What did we do next?
We hung out with our friends via Skype.
Oh, that's right. Let's skip rating our friends on a 10-point scale.
Yeah, even though they're never going to listen to this, that
Right.
might still be kind of gauche.
Right. Let's instead talk about the.
I feel like I definitely used the word gauche incorrectly, but go on.
Let's instead talk about the game, pun intended.
Yes, so this is a game we played with our friends. Pun Intended is an excellent game. It was given to me as a gift, I forget by whom, at some point during college. And basically the idea of the game is you have a card that has 6 different fill-in-the-blank puns on it. So like it'll be a pun, but the actual word that the pun hinges on is like left blank.
Right.
And so one person reads them each one at a time, and the team whose turn it is has to try and guess what the blank word is, basically. And it's very funny. I love puns.
Yeah.
So
There are definitely puns across the range of quality on these cards, but I have to say that like the majority of them are actually really good. So
yeah.
good
Like,
job to
it's
the
not
writers
it's not
of the
it's
game.
not uncommon to just like read a pun and then just start laughing, right?
Right.
So I would rate this game a 9 out of 10. I
Yeah.
think as a game, like it is funny to read the puns and stuff, but as a game it kind of gets old a little quickly. That's why I don't rate it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
But like, you know, for the time you are playing, it is a lot of fun. So and
Yeah.
funny.
I think I'm gonna be. I think I have very similar reasoning to you, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it's a 7 out of 10. And I think I'll maybe elaborate a little bit more on the game aspect of it, of which essentially you just get a point for getting it right,
Right.
and then get an additional point if you get all of them right on the card during your turn.
Well, yeah, sure.
Or is the last one worth?
The
2
last
points?
one's just worth 2 because it's
Oh.
harder.
Okay, well, I guess. Okay. I assume you, as the scorekeeper, accounted for that.
Yes,
correctly.
I counted for that.
So, but point being, like, that's not like. It's like the minimum amount of gamifying you can make the
right, this
get
activity.
this activity, which is a very good activity, but like could be I don't know how it could be better,
as a game.
but kind of meh as a game. So, all right, that is pun intended. The game, not that phrase. I don't think anybody puns. Let's see what happened next. Well, we went to
bed.
We went to bed. Bed, I gotta say, is a solid like 1 out of 10.
Yeah, well, you didn't have a bed.
I have been sleeping on the floor. There's also no air conditioning, so we just have the fans on, and it gets pretty warm upstairs. So, a solid 1 out of 10 for me. I'm sure your experience is much better.
Yes, well, I sleep on an actual bed, and also I sleep in the room with the fan with the open window. We could probably open the window in the room you're sleeping if you want.
That's true. Yeah, get that in for the last night.
Yeah.
That would probably raise it up to a 2 out of 10 if I had an open window.
So I'm usually not hot, except for last night when we had to keep the window closed because it was raining.
Right.
So I would rate my bed, 9 out of 10, honestly.
Yeah, fair enough.
So sorry for the disparity. All right, so
can't be helped.
The next day we got up and we drove to Paterson, New Jersey, and parked and walked through the rain to the bus stop, and we got on a bus to New York City. Stop me if you want to review any of the things that I've mentioned.
No, I think we're going to have to kind of glaze over some things because there's quite a bit going on in New York. So.
Sure. So we got to New York, and then we took the subway down to the area, downtown Manhattan, and we had lunch at a restaurant called Joe's Pizza. And did you get water there or no?
I did get water. It was just a bottle of water, so I don't feel like a rating is very meaningful because first of all, I don't remember what brand of bottled water it was, and second of all bottled water is like either slightly above or slightly below average.
Sure.
You never get like nice glass of water quality straight out of the bottle.
Sure. Okay, so then we walked down Broadway, not the one with all the theaters, but a road named Broadway.
Street.
And then we walked down Wall Street for a bit. We saw St. Paul's Chapel of Trinity Church.
Right. Very cool.
Which is where Alexander Hamilton is buried.
It's very interesting. I won't give this a numerical rating or anything, but I just want to say the fact that this, like, small, relatively speaking, small church and, like, not huge churchyard, but there is like a yard around it, has survived all this time inside the absolutely massive, Wall Street building scape.
Downtown New York, yeah.
It's very cool. I really like how some things in New York you're just like, how could that possibly still be here?
Right.
And yet it is.
Yep. So that was pretty cool.
I do want to give a numerical rating to the next thing coming up, which is the bull.
The bull, yeah. So for those of you who don't know, there's a statue of a metal bull near Wall Street that I guess represents, economic prosperity or whatever.
Right.
So let's hear what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, my main thought on the bull, I mean, like, obviously it's pretty interesting as a big metal bull. Like, you don't see those too often. But what I really want to give the numerical rating to is the fact that there was a line to take pictures at the bull.
Sure.
Not only at the head of the bull, but also the butt of the bull.
Right.
That was very good.
Yes.
I'm glad that you could get the authentic picture experience of seeing both ends of the bull.
And as we walked past, there was just a child holding the bull's balls, which for some reason it has. So.
Yeah, it was... excellent photo opportunities. I'd say the photo opportunities themselves are a good, 7.5 out of 10, but the
7.5 definitely not worth waiting in a long line.
Exactly,
for.
The line to the pictures I'm going to give a 2 out of 10.
Is there any? Why is it 2? Is there any redeeming quality?
1 point for each line.
Okay.
So the fact that there were 2 lines, obviously, if there was only 1 line, it would be twice as bad.
Sure.
Which would therefore be a 1.
Sure.
So I've got to give it a 2 in this instance.
Okay, I would give. So you gave the lines 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
The photo op 7.5 out of 10. What's the overall bull experience rating?
The overall bull experience, honestly, I got to give it a 7 out of 10 because, just walking by, I felt like I got 99% of the experience.
Yep.
Sure, I could have taken a picture with it,
right.
But we didn't take pictures of us with very many things in New York. We took pictures with the big significant things, but
right.
there's so much to see that if you were taking pictures with everything, I think that would in fact make the vacation a worse one.
Yeah.
So 7 out of 10, the bull.
I would say, in my opinion, I don't actually think the bull is that interesting.
Yeah.
Like you did mention that, you don't often see a metal statue of a bull, but like, as far as things in New York City go, it's like one of the least interesting things. So I would just give it a 5 out of 10 in my opinion overall, because as I said, I don't think it's that interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. I may need to consider my scale given some of the upcoming things. So
yeah,
I'll stand by my 7, but keep in mind that going forward, I'm going to shift my expectations to like, how interesting is this relative to New York?
Well, you also have to keep in mind that this was something we just saw in like a minute, right? We took a minute to walk past it, so like it received the appropriate amount of attention compared to other things that we did. So I think it's fair to rate it a 7.
Sure.
Like as an equally, quality experience to something else that we may have spent more time on that was actually more interesting. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but
yeah.
Okay, so let's after that we went to Battery Park, which is on the southern tip of Manhattan, and we saw from a distance the Statue of Liberty and New York Harbor, or New York Bay, and we saw a bunch of people waiting in line to get on the Ellis Island ferry. I don't know, is there anything you wanted to rate at the park?
The name of the park has got to be a solid 1 out of 10 for me, because I absolutely could not find the Battery.
We looked at a map, right, and it's like Battery Park, named after the Battery. Here's the Battery lawn. Here's the Battery, various things named after the Battery, but there was nothing actually called the Battery.
Right.
And we later found out, which we'll get to at some point, but that the name came from the fact that during the war, 1812 maybe? I don't remember.
Maybe.
There was a battery of cannons at that location.
Right. Which is, in my opinion, definitely less cool than whatever Battery would have had to be in New York City for them to make a park about it.
Right.
So
0 out of 10 for the fact that there were no cannons there.
That's true. They didn't even have the cannons.
But the park itself was nice.
Right.
But we're not going to rate that. That's not that important. It's just the name.
Right. After the Battery, let's see. We went to the 9/11 Memorial and Museum.
Yes.
Honestly, again, not going to give this a rating, but just a quick impression. That was a really nice place to be.
It was really well done.
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting. But we do want to rate. What did we want to rate about that?
The aggression of the birds while we were waiting outside.
We
sure.
saw.
There may have been other things as well, but
we saw a pigeon.
Yeah, they just come right up to you, man. I mean, like, if we had food, they probably would have killed us.
Yeah. I don't think they would have killed us. They might have tried though.
They might have tried. We're as we are much bigger than a pigeon. We probably would have won the fight.
Needed.
Citation needed. Yeah. So the aggression of the birds, really all over the city, but I especially noticed it here. Probably because there were a higher than normal density of tourists.
Yep.
Who have a higher propensity of feeding the pigeons, most likely. So let's. There was. I also want to jump backwards real quick to those 2 women in Battery Park who had the pigeons on their hands because they were just holding out
they were feeding them.
They were feeding them like a bag of chips from their hands.
You're definitely not allowed to do it.
Definitely not supposed to do that.
But they were taking pictures for their social media, I assume.
Right. So. But anyway, the aggression of the birds in and around the 9/11, well, really just around the 9/11 memorials. Gonna give that. Well, I don't know what to give it. I'm gonna say it's a 3 out of 10 because I didn't like it.
I'm gonna say it's a 9 out of 10 because I liked it.
Because it was very.
I like seeing the birds come up close.
Yeah, well, that's true. Birds up close is pretty cool. I was just they were kind of scary,
I was not scared.
Okay, well. Anything else about this one?
I think that's it for 9/11. Let's talk about what was next. Which was
what was next?
We tried to go to the Golden Diner for dinner.
That's right. We walked through Chinatown several blocks, only to find that our chosen dinner location, the Golden Diner, was temporarily closed due to a small fire, which was not currently going on. I assume there was some damage inside that they needed to, renovate.
So then we walked several more blocks to get to the subway.
Canal Street.
Canal Street. At this point, why don't we take a moment to rate the size of Manhattan?
I'm going to give the size of Manhattan a very unexpected 6 out of 10.
Why do you say that?
Because I didn't expect how big Manhattan was. If you look at it on a map, especially with the streets, the grid of streets, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's a lot of streets, but clearly, like, going from street to street can't be that bad because they're, obviously so tight and densely packed, and obviously that there's so much stuff in New York. It must be a very walkable city.
Right.
So definitely unexpected, and the reason I chose 6 was because on one hand, that's not a great thing that you can't just walk from place to place. We did have to take the subway several times to get around, which isn't like a bad experience in itself. I just personally would have preferred walking. But I can't go any lower than that because at the same time it was very interesting to have a varied distinct places that we could travel to around Manhattan while still never. At no point did we ever leave Manhattan, and we visited several very interesting and distinct locations.
The other thing was, we kind of basically stayed around the touristy areas the entire time.
Right.
We took the train past all of the less touristy areas.
Yeah.
So, we missed out on a whole lot of stuff that we could have seen. Anyway, so I would, I don't know, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like, it's kind of annoying how large it is because you can't just get from one place to another easily, but also it's nice. So I'll agree with your 6 out of 10.
Sure.
So, okay, anyway, then we took the train back up to the Midtown touristy area, and we ate dinner at a restaurant called Junior's Restaurant and Bakery.
This was like 1 block away from Times Square. So.
Literally 1 block away from Times Square, dinner time on a Sunday night, and it was not that crowded, honestly.
Yeah.
They were doing a good business, but it wasn't like packed like I would expect for a situation like that.
When we arrived, we were seated immediately.
Yes.
For reference. So
and we could see other empty tables.
Right. Maybe an hour or so later, as we were eating, it was starting to get pretty full, but I figured we were there around peak dinner time when we arrived ourselves. Maybe that's not the case for the city.
Yeah, so let's hear about the water at Junior's.
Yeah, the water at Junior's, once again, I mean, this guy was a pro. I gotta say, our waiter, 10 out of 10 for his water filling up skills. I had literally taken 2 drinks, and he came back and topped it up from a pitcher.
Yep.
And that's another thing, filling it up from a pitcher rather than I think this was maybe the case at the Italian restaurant too, that they would fill the water from a pitcher. But that filling a water from the pitcher rather than bringing me a whole new cup of water is a great experience because you might say oh no, you're not getting fresh ice each time. Your ice is just gonna melt and then your water won't be as cold. Right. Well, there's ice in the pitcher, so that's not a huge factor.
Nice hack.
Yeah, and also
life hack.
Life hack. As the restaurant patron, have your water filled up by a pitcher because there's ice in the pitcher, and so it doesn't matter whether there's ice.
As a restaurant patron, you don't really have any control over that.
Right.
But
it is still a life hack, so
yes.
So do it. But that means as your ice melts, not only is your water still cold because it was iced just a minute ago, but you're getting more and more water each pour.
Right.
Which obviously is fantastic. As for the quality of the Junior's water, I gotta say again, this is a good 6 or 7 out of 10 water. I wouldn't say it's quite as memorable as the Italian restaurant, we've said the Italian restaurant several times. I kind of don't remember what it's called anymore.
Little Sicily or something like that.
Little Venice?
Little Venice, there you go. Little Venice, that's correct.
Okay, well, gonna rate the Venice-ness of that restaurant like a 3 out of 10. There are probably places in Venice that look like it, but didn't strike me as particularly Venetian.
What qualities would you say would be considered Venetian?
Really, I would just expect that the walkways between the tables would be water.
Yeah, over canals.
And they would have to bring you in a boat to your table. That would be an excellent restaurant.
That would, but I feel like in downtown Binghamton, that's a little bit of an unreasonable expectation.
Definitely very difficult to pull off. But maybe in the Midwest, if you wanted to open up an authentic Venetian restaurant experience, you've got the space for canals. Anyway, let's get back to Junior's water. Like I said, 6 or 7 out of 10. Again, excellent taste, with no flavor, but just maybe a notch down from the Little Venice restaurant. But again, the whole experience overall, I would say, is better because this guy was definitely on top of keeping my glass topped up all the time.
Sure. Okay, so that concludes Junior's. Then we went to the Empire State Building.
Right, we had bought some tickets actually while we were at Junior's because they're timed entry tickets. So just to make sure we were buying them for the correct time, we bought tickets to go to the 86th floor observation deck of the Empire State Building, which was a very cool experience. I'm glad we did that.
It is cool, but that's not what we're here to review.
Right. We are in fact going to review the elevator up to the 80th floor from the second floor. First of all, it's not from the ground floor, which is a little bit annoying. But at least they have an escalator up to the second floor. It's kind of strange that they did that, actually. I assume that's because there's some kind of main lobby on the first floor that,
right,
non-tourists
right, the second
use.
Yeah.
Because it's a building with stuff in it. But anyway, on this elevator ride, there's a short video that plays on screens that are mounted on the ceiling of the elevator, and it in fact plays on the way up and on the way down. There's a separate video.
It's like a different video.
So let's rate them individually. First, on the way up.
Well, let's describe them so the listeners have some idea of what we're talking about. So on the way up, they try to make it seem like you are going up the Empire State Building as it's being built.
Right.
So you're seeing workers and metal being put in place.
Yeah.
And things like that. That's mostly what I remember about that one.
I think that was the defining characteristic. I don't really remember anything else about it either.
So I would say that's that video was, well, first of all, the overall experience of watching a video on the ceiling was mildly interesting for how novel it was
right
at the beginning, and they used it well when they're showing you going up, right?
Right.
So I think on the way up, I would give it a 6 out of 10. Really, most of that 6 is just good use of the ceiling part of it, and I didn't have to stand in the elevator looking at nothing during that time.
Yeah. Giving it a 6 out of 10, 6 points for novelty and 0 points for ergonomics.
The actual content of the video is not actually that interesting. Is I guess what I'm going at. But what would you give the ride up video?
The ride up video, I think I'm going to be a little bit more harsh and give it a 5 out of 10 for basically the same reasons as you outlined. But also because from the outside you could clearly see that the video was, or no, not the video, that the building was already built.
Oh my gosh.
So realism.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
I'm talking it down to 5 as well,
okay.
Just for that.
Just for that. Yeah, realism, -1 out of 10. So, gotta tack that onto our previous 6 to give it a 5.
Sure. So on the way down, it was more of an abstract kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it kept zooming out of where you were, and then it zoomed out to the whole world eventually, and then it zoomed out to imply that the whole world was inside the Empire State Building.
Right.
Which I guess has symbolic meaning of some kind, but really made no sense to me.
Yeah.
And also, by that time, I was tired of craning my neck upwards. So I would give the ride down video 3 out of 10.
Yeah, definitely gonna agree with that 3.
I give it credit for, again, I didn't have to just stare at nothing while I was going down, but other than that, that's the only credit it gets.
Right. Novelty had certainly worn off at that point.
Yes.
We had been standing up at the top for quite a while. Our feet hurt because we had been walking around the city all day.
Yes, by the way, in case the listeners are interested in this, 50,000 steps over the course of our 2 days in New York City.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Very impressive. That probably eclipses my entire previous month's step count. From working from home and so forth.
Yeah.
Not a lot of walking.
For sure. No, for sure.
But, very, very exciting to be able to do that.
So after that, we briefly walked through Times Square. Did you want to comment on anything about Times Square?
Times Square, I'm gonna give the Times Square experience I'm gonna give this the 5 out of 10, kind of for the same reasons that you gave the Bull a 5 out of 10 earlier. I think of the interesting thing is in New York, it's actually one of the least interesting in my opinion. It's definitely very cool that there are all of those gigantic screens there. Like, that's very visually impressive. But unfortunately, all of the giant screens are showing us ads all the time.
Yep.
Which just, it definitely cheapens the experience in my opinion. I kind of wish this is where they were showing us videos of the Empire State Building surrounding the entire Earth.
Sure.
And things like that. Like, can you imagine how cool it would be if, like, at least just a single screen in Times Square was looping cool animations of, like, the touristy locations
right
in New York City. Like, even if it was an ad, just, like, visit the Empire State Building, visit the Brooklyn Bridge, go on the boat tours, go on the subway, stuff like that. That would be 10 times better than the, Verizon ads that we were seeing and
Sure.
stuff like that. So,
yeah, I'm not going to rate Times Square, but I just want to say that I really think Times Square is pretty cool.
yeah,
I don't actually mind all the ads.
yeah.
Okay, so then we caught our bus back to New Jersey and drove to our hotel. So that concludes. Did you want to review anything about that, or?
A solid 3.5 out of 10 experience leaving the parking garage, really entering the parking garage is why I'm talking all the points in New Jersey. Because by the time we got back there, I mean, in their defense, it was about 12:30 a.m. Or maybe about 12 a.m. I don't know, 12:15, somewhere in that time range at least. That's in their defense. But in our defense, we had walked around all day and were very tired, and they had locked all of the doors, so we just had to, like, walk in the car entrance,
right.
Which was not the polished experience I was hoping for it to be. All right, and then we stayed in our hotel in New Jersey. It was a decent hotel. I don't really feel the need to rate it on a 10-point scale because literally every hotel that I've ever been in has been either of equal or lesser quality. I've never been in, like, a high quality hotel. It was just a normal hotel. So that's all I have to say about the hotel. Anything you want to note?
Nope.
All right. So once we stayed in the hotel, we checked out of the hotel and then drove to a different bus stop in New Jersey to get on a different bus to end up in the same destination in New York.
Right.
We got off of that bus. Second time around, I do think the getting off the bus experience was slightly better because we knew what we were doing at that point.
Right.
It was a little bit confusing the first time around, but I can't really blame the bus for that. We just were confused.
You got to do it once.
Been there, right? As with anything, the second time you do it, you had already done it before, so you know what you're doing. What did we even do first that day?
So first we took the subway down to Chelsea Market.
We took the subway down to Chelsea Market. The market itself opens at something like 6 a.m.
Yep.
Keep in mind this was a Monday morning at this point. And most of the shops at that point inside the market, even though you could get inside the market building, the shops were closed. So for a while we just kind of wandered around and looked at what shops there were, waiting for, we only really had to wait like 15 or 20 minutes for the first shops to start to open, really. But still, 10 a.m. opening a shop in New York City seems a bit late in my opinion. So
Yes. Did you get water while we were there?
You know, I didn't get water at any of the shops. No, so I don't think
Because we did have lunch while we were there, so that's why I asked.
Right. A couple other things that we will mention but not rate. The donuts. Donuts, I would say, were pretty good. It was actually very interesting to watch the donut machine make the donuts. It was an automated thing.
Sure.
Also, the grilled cheeses that we ate for lunch, also good, I would say.
Yeah.
My grilled cheese, I think if you're a grilled cheese purist out there, you will say that this was in fact a melt and not a grilled cheese because it contained ham. It wasn't just melted cheese on bread. But you did have a true grilled cheese,
I just
classic
have
grilled
a regular grilled cheese.
which also looked good.
It was good.
After
By the way, my comments about grilled cheese, it's kind of crazy. Like, when you, if you're at a restaurant, right, and you see grilled cheese, at least this is my opinion, this is what I do. When I see grilled cheese on a menu, I'm like, I'm not getting grilled cheese. That seems like, that's like, you know, that's kind of lame, a lame thing to get.
Right.
You know, plus I'll still be hungry afterwards. But this was one filling grilled cheese. They did not skimp on the cheese. The bread was pretty big and thick. So,
they like grilled it in a panini press.
Right. So, you know, maybe just recalibrating my thoughts about grilled cheese.
Yeah. I would still say at like a sit-down restaurant, I would not order a grilled cheese.
Yeah.
But I have absolutely no regrets ordering this grilled cheese from the you know, cheese specialty restaurant, essentially.
I think my opinion is basically, you know, most of the time I probably still won't order it from a sit-down restaurant, but like, you know, if I'm really wanting that, which does happen sometimes, I'm probably going to be less inhibited from ordering it. Yeah,
that's good. That's a good point. Let's see. After the lunch stop at Chelsea Market, we did go to we walked to a boat tour, and most of the way we walked there was up on the High Line, which is a public park, which is built on an old elevated railway. So the tracks are actually still like down, but they've put, you know, basically a concrete floor all along and you know, some pathways and a lot of plants. It's like a garden up there. Maybe I don't know. Not really. I suppose it's not like a garden. It's like
it's a park.
It's a park.
It's like a walkway with a bunch of plants along it.
Yeah, and it's very good.
Let me ask you, let's rate the part that the listeners are most interested here with, which is the benches of the park.
Yes.
Which we did not sit on.
We did not sit on them, but we did certainly walk by several of them when we saw people sitting on them. Right. So based on their facial expressions, I feel comfortable rating the comfort of these benches.
Right, but also the visual.
But also the visual, which is, I think, the most striking thing about it. I'm going to go ahead and give these benches a good 8.5 out of 10.
Sure.
I do want to say that my initial impression of these benches was definitely like a 9 out of 10. But I do want to dock half a point because as I later realized, so first let me describe the bench to you. It's your standard bench.
That's it.
That's it. There's nothing special. No. So there's a bench, you know, the seat of the bench and the back of the bench at an appropriate angle for comfort. But on one side of the bench, like the wooden bench kind of smoothly transitions to a stone support that starts off like tangent to the bench surface and then kind of curves down in kind of a gentle ramp until it is once again tangent to the ground surface. So kind of an interesting visual, and at first the reason I gave this a 9 out of 10 is because I thought that was the sole support of the bench, which would have been very impressive as this entire bench, this like, I don't know, 10 or 12 foot long bench maybe would be just completely cantilevered on this very visually striking kind of ramp support thing. But I do have to dock half a point because as we eventually discovered, or maybe as you guys knew all along and I eventually discovered, there was a support kind of hidden on the back side, on the other side of the bench. So it was supported on both sides, which is slightly less cool, but visually did look very good. So
visual, you're saying 8.5 out of 10.
Well, I'd say visual 9 out of 10, but then like.
Well, you said 9 out of 10, but dock half a point.
But
so
that, well, okay, I guess
that's where I got that.
I guess so, yeah.
And okay, so visual 8.5 out of 10. Comfort, what do you rate it?
Comfort looks like a solid, like, I'd give it a solid 6.5 out of 10. And to be honest, that's like pretty much the high end for any bench that isn't cushioned.
Right. So overall, what would you say?
Overall bench experience, I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10, which is basically just the average of those two
Yes,
scores.
I pretty much agree. I would say 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting looking bench and very functional. You know, if your feet hurt, sitting on it will be very satisfying.
Right.
So.
Cool. So we did, as I said, after we walked the High Line, we did walk to a boat tour. This was, again, we're not sponsored, but this was from the Circle Line boat company, I guess, boat tour company.
Yep.
That took us essentially around the southern half of the island of Manhattan. We went down the Hudson and then came back up the East River until we crossed underneath 3 bridges, but did not quite reach the 4th. So if you wanted to look at a map to see just how far up we went, I guess that's a good indication there. Let's see, what to say about the boat tour. Obviously, we saw many distinct landmarks, but I do want to call out real quickly that the water on the boat tour. First of all, I didn't have any of the water on the boat tour, but it cost $4 for a bottle of water.
That
so
is
I'm
a lot.
gonna give it a 2 out of 10.
Just based on price.
Just based on the price, yeah, price alone, and for the fact that it's a bottle of water as well. Like, you know, obviously
it's not going to be that
can't
good, guaranteed, right?
So,
yeah, the boat tour was very cool, but yeah, water, bad job.
Yep.
So let's talk about the next thing, which was we took the subway to and walked through Central Park to get to the Met, Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Yeah, lots of very, very cool art here. I do want to immediately call out, you know, you may have been thinking when I say 2 out of 10 for a $4 bottle of water, you know, how could I possibly give that a 2 instead of a 1? Well, I'll tell you, it's because after the boat tour, when I was thinking like, oh, I'm thirsty, but I'm not going to buy a $4 bottle of water. That'd be ridiculous. Well, we got to the Met, and I was like, okay, well, there's a little cafe in the Met. I'll buy some water at the Met because I'm still thirsty, and I do need to drink something. I haven't had much to drink
And hopefully
today.
it'll be cheaper than that
Hopefully
ridiculous $4.
You know, honestly, like on a boat, like I can see them just cranking the prices up just ridiculously. But on a respectable at a respectable museum, surely they're not gonna, you know, nickel and dime me for a bottle of water. But let me tell you, this was a 1 out of 10 bottle of water because it cost me $4.50.
Oh my gosh.
Which is, you know, actually the same price as the bottled sodas. So, you know, no benefit to buying a water as to buying a soda. You know, it was a very bad experience. The water tasted fine, you know, maybe even a little bit better than it normally would have because, as I said, I was very thirsty at this point. Immediately after leaving the Met, of course, we passed by a guy who was selling like just a $1 bottle of water from his cooler on the street. It's very, very big cooler. So props to that guy. I would rate his water, you know, as a bottled water, 6.5 out of 10. Again, that's basically the peak bottle of water rating, as with the peak bench rating.
Sure.
For an uncushioned bench, as for bottled water. So
before we continue here, how long have we been recording for?
We've been recording for quite a long time. 1 hour and 3 minutes, and we've basically reached most of our New York trip.
Yeah. So afterwards, we walked through Central Park. We saw we saw the reservoir. I forget what it's called, but it's like
The
basically
Jackie Kennedy Onassis
big pond
Memorial
slash
Reservoir or something
big pond
like that.
slash small lake.
Yeah, very interesting. Lots of joggers.
I do want to rate one thing in the reservoir, which was there was a log
Yes.
with like 6 ducks and geese, not each, but like 6 total birds, ducks
Right.
and geese on it.
Right.
Which was hilarious. I
Right.
would say that log was the first thing I'm gonna rate 10 out of 10. That was
Yeah.
very amusing and very interesting to see.
If you're planning a trip to New York City, I think both of us can wholeheartedly recommend going to Central Park and seeing that log.
Yes, I assume it's a permanent fixture.
Yeah. I gotta say, like, to be clear, the thing that makes that log so great and so striking was not only were there so many birds on it, there just weren't any birds in other places. It was just all of the birds on the reservoir were on that log.
Yeah, we saw a few others, but it was like, that was at least half of all the birds we saw.
Right.
So.
Excellent experience. Would wholeheartedly recommend. Definitely the place to go in New York City. Let's see. And after that, anything else in Central Park you want to note?
Not really.
I'll just briefly say the amount of dogs in Central Park was very
a good amount.
A good amount. Very, very wholesome number of dogs. You could pretty much always see a dog.
Right.
It's the mark of a good park. Afterwards, we went to Shake Shack, which is for dinner, which is a classic, I suppose, East Coast chain. Is that accurate to say?
I honestly don't know where it is. I've seen it. There's some in Pennsylvania too.
Okay, well, I've certainly never seen them before, and they were good. We did get shakes. We did get burgers.
Yeah, but let's talk about Shake Shack, because when we got there, there was a worker there who said to us something like, we have no lids for the cups, and so you won't be able to order sodas from the self-ordering kiosks.
Right, so to be clear, there was a self-ordering kiosk, and then there was a cashier, like a person, and you could go to either one to place your orders.
And so we're like, oh, that's a shame. So we go to the self-ordering kiosks, we order our food, and you and Shelby ordered a bottles of water, and I got no drink.
I'm going to rate that bottle of water 4 out of 10, by the way.
By the way, as I found out later, they actually did have tap water available for free.
Right, which, does contribute to my rating of the bottle of water. It did taste fine. It was definitely one of the worst bottles of water, because it comes with the belated knowledge that I could have just had free tap water, which almost certainly would have been a 6 or 7 out of 10.
Sure. But anyway, the real kicker was that also on the self-service kiosks, you couldn't order you could order ice cream, but you couldn't order milkshakes.
Right.
Which is like half the reason you come to Shake Shack.
Right. So we were initially very disappointed until we got our food and went to our table and started noticing that...
we saw other people had shakes, and the shakes had lids on them, and we're like, what is going on? I thought there were no lids. So afterwards, we just went up and ordered shakes from the, in-person, cashier place.
Right.
And everything was fine. And we got the shakes. So I would say not rating the food, just rating this weird snafu of service, I guess.
Right.
That was definitely a 3 out of 10.
Yeah. I've got to agree with you there. Straight up 3. Worker seemed to mean well, and in fact she did. Once we were at our table, which was downstairs, by the way, the counter was like the where you placed your orders and received your food was upstairs
at street level.
And we were down in the basement, I suppose. And the same worker who told us this confusing thing about lids actually delivered us our food down there, which was very, very kind. So, but doesn't make sense. Doesn't make up for how confused we were about the drink thing and the shakes.
Sure.
So, 3 out of 10.
Yep. And so then that was pretty much it. We caught the subway back to the bus station and took our bus out back to our car and drove back to Binghamton. So
yep. That
concludes our New York trip. Before we conclude the New York review part, do you want to review the gift/souvenir shops that we went to?
Absolutely. I'm going to give every single shop of any sort, including the gift shops. I'm going to specifically call out the gift shops at the Empire State Building and the Met. I'm going to give every shop that we visited a 0 out of 10 for failing to have the one item that I wanted to buy. which is a souvenir pint glass from the city. So we're on our way, as we said at the beginning of the podcast, to Niagara Falls. So hopefully they've got a souvenir pint glass there so that I can have at least one from my trip. Otherwise, I may be forced to retroactively give the entire state of New York a 0 out of 10 rating. Aside from, obviously, the duck log in Central Park is exempt from that.
It's exempt. The entire state of New York, except for the sovereign log of the ducks.
It's kind of like how the
embassy is its own. Is the country. The log is not part of New York. It belongs to the ducks.
It belongs to the ducks. Let's see. Should we? I know we're essentially at time for a typical podcast. Would you like to review?
Yeah, let's review yesterday's trip. We didn't do it too much, so it shouldn't be too long.
Sure.
So we went to Buttermilk Falls State Park, which is, as I mentioned before, is outside of Ithaca.
Yep.
And we did a hike there. They also have swimming there, but unfortunately it was closed, which was kind of a bummer because I would really enjoyed it.
Yep.
And we brought our own water there. Do you want to rate the water bottle that you got from my tap at home and had been cooled in my refrigerator?
Yeah, so your tap water, I gotta say, is a solid 6 out of 10 tap water.
Sure.
Obviously, since it was refrigerated, that's got to bump it up another point. And because I had to, well, actually, you know what? Because it was because it was cold, not specifically refrigerated, I'm going to bump that up 2 points. So we're sitting at an 8 out of 10 now.
Nice.
Obviously, cold water is better than not cold water. And then to arrive at my final score, which is 7 out of 10, I'm going to dock it back a point. Because I did feel as we hiked that I needed to somewhat ration my water intake because I didn't want to run out of water.
Sure.
And I would like to point out at this point, because I would be remiss not to, that Shelby did tell me that I should bring an additional bottle of water to pour into my insulated bottle once I ran out of water. And obviously that would have been the smarter move.
Sure.
And I said, we're not going to be hiking that much. I probably don't need to do that.
You wanted more water at the end?
Well, I didn't necessarily want more water at the end, but I can tell you that throughout the hike, I would have been drinking less. I would have been drinking more water, like more frequently, had I not known in my head, like, I've got to make this bottle last.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I drank very little of my water, so I was just thinking, like, I could have given you some of my water if you had wanted.
Oh, well, okay. Lessons learned. But
okay, so that was the hike.
Yep.
And
I do also want to give a numerical rating to Buttermilk Falls itself.
Oh, the actual falls.
The actual falls. I'm going to split this rating into 2 parts before I give it my full rating. Buttermilk Falls itself, I'm going to give an 8 out of 10. It's certainly a very impressive waterfall in its own right. It's definitely not the best waterfall I've ever seen, and as we've stated a couple of times already, we're on our way to Niagara Falls, so I've got to leave myself some room to go up.
Sure, yeah. I want to say about Buttermilk Falls itself.
Yeah.
It's not like when you think of the word waterfall, it's not really what you're thinking of.
Right,
because
it is.
It's like basically water flowing down a rocky hill.
Yeah.
So it's like, and it's all white water, so it is kind of like a waterfall, but it's not like a single drop like you would normally expect.
Exactly. So yeah, definitely I've seen some single drop waterfalls that were more visually striking, but this in itself was a very very worthy waterfall.
Right.
However, I've got to give its name of Buttermilk Falls probably a good 2 out of 10 because, points for kind of looking like buttermilk, but it was in fact just water.
Sure.
So
I think the name was like 4 out of 10 in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think actually Buttermilk Falls is not buttermilk, like it's white water, so it's like I kind of get where they're coming from.
Right.
But also all waterfalls are white water, so it's like kind of like, all right, they could have been any waterfall could have been named that.
Yeah. It's a good point.
But I do think it is a decent name.
Yeah.
And I would give the overall falls also an 8 out of 10. I think actually the effect of it coming down the hill instead of being just a single fall was actually very cool looking.
Yeah, definitely unique.
And so overall, what would you give it?
Overall, so first of all, having listened to your explanation, I'm also going to bump up my rating of Buttermilk Falls, the name, by 1 point to 3.
Okay.
Because as I was listening to you, I realized how fun it is to both say and listen to the word buttermilk.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to give the overall experience a 7 out of 10. So slightly less good than if I had just seen the falls and then been magically teleported back to the car, because that hill, man, after we...
Damn.
Yeah.
I mean, the hike to get to the falls was all the way downhill.
Right.
And therefore, the hike back to our car was all the way uphill.
Right. And I say we got like 95% of the way up to the height we needed to be at within the first like 30% of the hike.
Right.
It was brutal. So
okay.
7 out of 10 overall experience.
I would agree with that overall rating, 7 out of 10.
All right, and then afterwards we this was obviously one of our shorter days activities. So, well, I suppose I shouldn't really say that because we did activities afterwards.
We went to Ithaca.
Ithaca's a nice little town.
We walked along some shops and went into we went into 2 shops.
Yes.
The first one was a brain teaser.
It's called the Brain Shop.
I don't know. It's kind of like a shop of different puzzles and
right. Very interesting. Very cool to look around.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting.
I'm gonna give this shop not a numerical rating, but a very high score overall for having those puzzles out for us to play with.
Right.
We didn't stay long enough for me to actually solve the puzzle that I had started to play with. So I've got to give that puzzle a good rating because I was playing with it for quite a long time and stayed interested. Because I stood there and played with the puzzle for so long, I did feel obligated to purchase something. You actually
purchased 2 things.
I did. I did purchase 2 things. I purchased the card game Flux, which our listeners may be slightly familiar with in the form of Zombie Flux, which SPS owns. So Flux is very similar to Zombie Flux, except it's not about zombies.
Yes.
That's basically 100% of the thing. And then as we were getting ready to leave the shop, Shelby also pointed out that this store carried the world's smallest harmonica, which is basically a keychain harmonica that is like 1 inch long.
Yes.
And has 4 holes. And it can play basically the major scale in C major. And so I'm going to rate my purchases. I'm not going to rate the shop itself, but I'm going to rate my purchases a 9.5 out of 10. Obviously not as good as the duck log, but pretty much as good as you can get.
Pretty much,
outside of that.
As close as you can get to the duck log without being there.
Right.
Yeah, I like that shop as well. And then the second shop we went...
Oh, wait. Before we move on to the second shop, I do also want to call out the gradient puzzles.
Oh,
those were all... I didn't buy one, but I really wanted to. I was a little bit worried about fitting it in my luggage on the flight home. But those puzzles would be, I feel like, a lot of fun to do. I do like puzzles, and I haven't done a puzzle in a long time, and I don't own any puzzles. And now I'm hoping that a listener of this podcast or a listener in the car is going to give me a gift of a gradient puzzle at some point in the future. That would be excellent.
For the listeners, why don't you tell them what a gradient puzzle is, because they might not know.
Okay, yeah. If it's not immediately clear to you what the by the name what a gradient puzzle is, it's essentially a.
Just to be clear, I definitely know what it is. I'm just saying the listeners might not know what it is.
Right. You literally saw it.
I saw it, so I know what it is.
So clearly,
I definitely remember.
But a gradient puzzle is essentially there's a one-dimensional gradient across the puzzle of color. So there were a couple of different instances. One of them went from like kind of a purple to blue to green.
That one went to green?
Yeah, it was like a light green at the top.
I could not. Oh, okay. I couldn't tell the difference between the purple and the blue.
The purple and the blue is unclear. Maybe even to me, like I could tell the difference, but you do have to look at it. And then the other one was from like orange to yellow to pink, which I thought was the better of the two. And then there were obviously several other smaller 500-piece puzzles. The ones that I described initially were 1,000-piece puzzles, which for any listener out there who is planning to get me a gradient puzzle as a gift, I would prefer the 1,000-piece puzzle. But obviously, yeah, just the mental image of doing a gradient puzzle, especially because it's a one-dimensional gradient from essentially the bottom of the puzzle to the top. Every like side to side line is the same color, so I just, you can't do the thing that you would normally do, which is look at a piece and think, oh, this piece looks like this,
right? Which
is where I'm going to put it in the puzzle. It's got to be a very interesting experience to make. Okay, that was actually a little bit longer of a tangent on the gradient puzzles than I intended.
The second shop we went to was like basically an artisan shop, so they had like various different things, but made in a very nice and visually appealing way.
Yes.
So for example, they had like a coaster that I really liked that was kind of like, it was like glass, and then it had like kind of some kind of crystals inside of it.
It kind of looked like a geode, except it was flat.
Yeah. And they had these golf putters.
Oh, they were beautiful.
They were like glass, and then they had like inside they had like some kind of gem or beautiful rocks of some kind.
Yeah.
And they were like $300.
Yeah, literally everything in this shop was fascinating to look at and well outside my budget.
Yeah, it was pretty expensive. But it was all super cool looking.
Yeah.
A lot of laser cut stuff. Honestly, I know we're not generally trying to actually seriously rate things, but this shop was definitely like 9, just to peruse, not to buy stuff. 9 out of 10.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, we kind of overheard the shopkeeper talking to a couple of the other customers, and it does sound like this shop over the years has kind of like traveled across the country with the shopkeepers.
Sure.
So certainly some fascinating backstory, and I'm sure they've picked up contacts with lots of artisans across the country to stock their shop, which is why the contents were so fascinating and definitely very. If I was extremely wealthy, I would love to be a frequent customer of this shop.
Absolutely. So after that, we went to dinner at Franco's.
Yeah, I'm gonna give the visual distance on the map between the shop we were at and Franco's a 3-star rating, because not 3-star, 3-point rating. Have we been rating things in stars by mistake sometimes? I haven't noticed that before.
No, I don't think we've rated anything in
hopefully
stars
that's the first time I made that mistake. A 3 out of 10 rating, 3 out of 10, because it looked like it was just down the block, like maybe 1 or 2 blocks down the street, but it ended up being like a 15 or 20 minute walk down the road. Which, again, after we had taken 50,000 steps the previous 2 days. And
we were kind of done with that at that point. And then walked like up an entire gorge.
Also hiked up a gorge. So, not excited about the hike, but I have to say the pizza at the end of the hike, we didn't rate the Joe's pizza. We just rated the water.
We're not trying to seriously rate things. Just rate the water.
I'm gonna rate the water at this restaurant again. Maybe like a 5.5 out of 10. It's definitely not the best bottle of water I've ever had, but at least it was only like $2, which is, what I've come to expect from a restaurant bottle of water.
Sure.
To be honest. Again, kind of disappointed that the only drink available in water form was bottled water. I always kind of hope that restaurants have tap water as well, but can't really blame them when they don't, because tap water is just free usually. So.
Right.
But anyway, good water, good pizza, worth the walk. We accidentally didn't get the garlic knots, so I assume those would have been good as well.
Sure.
Afterwards, we walked back to our car. Again, walk bad. But once we got to our car, we drove back to Binghamton, where we went bowling. The bowling alley mask policy enforcement, straight up 0 out of 10.
Yeah, it said no mask, no service, and then we didn't see a single person wearing a mask. So
right.
But I do want to rate the other players who were playing around us.
Oh, man.
Bowling skill, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, like, this is, like, equal to the duck log. I'm just saying, like,
Right.
their skill was, they were really good.
Right.
It was fascinating and also hilarious to watch ourselves, like, throw gutter balls while they, like, are spinning it to get a strike.
Yeah. They were probably not pros, but definitely frequent bowlers.
I think that one guy must have been, like...
The one guy might have been,
Yeah.
actually.
So, anyway. And then we saw Black Widow, which we're not going to rate. But I do want to rate the rain on the way there.
Yikes.
And it started raining unbelievably hard.
Yeah.
And severe thunder and lightning on our way to the movies.
Right. We were getting flood warning alerts on our phones.
I got like 3 flash flood warnings over the course of the movie.
Right.
And let me just say, absent being in the rain, just like the rain in general, like that's like, you can't beat that. That's 10 out of 10 rain.
Yeah.
It's just so cool to see it raining that hard.
Yep.
But trying to drive in it was very bad.
Yeah.
Like pretty much 2 out of 10. Like
Right.
It wasn't like so bad that I couldn't drive, but like I had to drive at like half the speed limit so I didn't crash.
Yeah, I've been there before. It's not fun.
So I would say overall 5 out of 10. Really 2 conflicting parts of the experience.
Yeah, as I did not have to drive and could just watch the rain, I'm gonna leave this rating at like an 8.5 out of 10 for the rain. So very, very good rain. The only thing that would have made it better, perhaps even a 10 out of 10, on par with the Ducks even, not even a reserved 10 out of 10, but just a straight up 10 out of 10.
Sure.
Is if I had a nice porch to sit on with a swing, and a nice cold glass of water.
And if the lightning or the thunder was louder.
And the thunder was louder and more frequent.
We saw quite a bit of lightning, but the thunder was kind of quiet for what you would expect.
Yeah.
So if it was like loud thunder, that would have been cool.
Yep.
All right, so I think that's basically it. Since we just after that we came back and went to bed.
We went to bed, woke up,
now
got in the car, and started recording a podcast.
We didn't even shower or anything. We just woke up and got in the car.
In fact, we slept in the car. We never got out of the car.
I never got out of the car. Is there any closing thoughts that you have?
Let's see. A couple of closing ratings real quick here, rapid fire. The drive to Niagara Falls is definitely going to be a 4 out of 10. All 4 of those points coming from the fact that we get to record the podcast.
Yes.
It is the longest drive of our trip so far, which I'm not looking forward to. However, the anticipation of seeing Niagara Falls in person is definitely an 8 out of 10, and I'm hoping that the falls themselves will be either a 9, 9.5, or possibly even a 10 out of 10. I know the Canadian side is supposedly a better view.
Right.
Unfortunately, the Canadians are understandably not allowing us into the country right now.
They are not, although, side note, I actually saw that starting in August, they are allowing people in.
Ah, okay.
I think you have to be vaccinated. Maybe that might not be correct, but they are allowing people in August.
Gotcha.
And I know the Toronto Blue Jays are going back to Toronto. They've been playing in Buffalo this whole time. They're going back to Toronto at the end of this month.
Nice.
So, anyway. But yes, we cannot go there now, so we'll be on the American side. We will be able to go on the Maid of the Mist, which is the boat that goes, in the water down there.
Right.
So you can get a good view of the falls.
Right.
And we may or may not do Cave of the Winds, which is like a little walkway down near the base of the Bridal Veil Falls.
Right.
So we'll let you. Well, I guess we won't let you know, but
we might briefly cover it.
We might talk. We might talk about it, but so yeah, that's I think that concludes this episode of the podcast. Our final live episode for at least quite a while.
Yeah, one of the last before we go on hiatus.
Definitely just the last before we go on hiatus.
Oh, well, there you go. This is it. So I guess if you send us an email about
No, sorry. This is just the last live episode. It's not the last episode.
Sorry. Okay, I just meant one of the last episodes.
Yeah, one of the last episodes, the last live episode before hiatus.
Gotcha. Okay.
All
right.
Sorry to make everyone panic for a second.
Well, at least we cleared it up almost immediately.
Yes. Okay, so I guess that's it. Send us your thoughts about anything we talked about here today, what you want to hear more of, anything like that. I'm Alex.
I'm Alex.
And this has been
Joel.